How to grow Brussels. Brussels sprouts, Asaicca oleracea emifera, is a cool and humid climate plant. It is a botanical variety of vegetable cabbage. It is cultivated similarly to white cabbage. Its modern version was bred in the 18th century in Belgium, near Brussels. It was probably obtained from a cross between head cabbage and kale as early as the 13th century. Choosing varieties from early, mid-early to late, we can collect it until December and even April. It should be grown in a sunny position, as it may not set heads well in the shade. Brussels sprouts should be planted in spring and mid-late summer for mature plants in the fall. The minimum growth temperature is 6 degrees Celsius. It grows best at 12 to 18 degrees Celsius. If it's too warm, the heads become loose. On a 100 centimeters tall shoot, numerous shortened shoots grow in the axils of the leaves, ending in small heads built like white cabbage. The height of the plants and the number of heads are varietal characteristics. It should be remembered that Brussels sprouts occupy a patch for many months, so the position where it will grow should be a quiet place, because in high winds tall plants can lie down. Here I will mention that tall varieties are worth stakes. The position for Brussels sprouts should also be a sunny place to obtain large compact heads and with fertile soil with good structure, rich in calcium. The optimum pH is 6.0 to 7.0. The optimum pH for most vegetables is around 6.8. Brussels sprouts require a minimum of 6 hours of sunlight, but the more the better. Brussels sprouts have more nutritional value than head cabbage. It contains a lot of vitamin C, vitamin B, carotene, and twice as much protein as head cabbage. It is a good source of mineral salts, especially iron, phosphorus, and calcium. In addition, it has anti-cancer properties, contains sulforaphane, which is a strong antioxidant. It is most often eaten cooked as a vegetable for dinner. It is worth knowing that when cooking Brussels sprouts, adding a little milk to the water eliminates the bitter aftertaste. Brussels sprouts can withstand very low temperatures. Small leaf heads ripen best in cool and even slightly frosty weather conditions. Spring planting also works well in cooler climates. During the tying of the heads, the optimum humidity is approximate 65 to 75%. It tolerates frosts down to -10 degrees Celsius, and well-grown plants even up to -20 degrees. However, with repeated frosts and subsequent thaws, it will start to rot. It must be harvested after the first frost at the latest. Frost makes Brussels sprouts lose their bitterness and gain in taste. Just like kale, it is sweeter and more delicate. Brussels sprouts are a biennial plant. In the first year it forms heads, Brussels sprouts which are harvested and eaten when left in the garden. The next year it produces flowers and seeds. Brussels sprouts have high water requirements. Like other cabbages, it requires abundant watering. Mulching can be used to keep moisture at the right level. This will keep the ground temperature and humidity lower. It should be watered regularly, providing 2.5 to almost 4 centimeters of water per week instead of rain. However, it has lower soil requirements than cabbage. It succeeds even on light and low fertile soils, but then they must be sufficiently fertilized, e.g. sandy and sandy clay soils. On lighter soils it gives a weaker but earlier yield. Lake varieties are best grown on fertile and moist soils. The most suitable will be medium clay soils, alluvial soils, loess, well-drained soils, Chernozem, and peat. Non-acidic humus soils will be ideal. Brussels sprouts do not grow well in acidic soils, which contribute to the formation of club root. To avoid this disease, it is enough to keep the soil pH deacidified. We grow Brussels sprouts in the first or second year after the manure dug in autumn, as the main crop or catch crop. It is best to grow it after legumes or root crops. The soil should be deeply dug with manure. This procedure can also be performed in early spring. Brussels sprouts should not be grown in the same place for 4 years. This also applies to other cabbages. A good forecrop for Brussels sprouts is winter and early spring spinach, lettuces, spring onions, and radishes. It can also be green peas. If there was a beet nematode on the bed, Brussels sprouts should not be grown after beetroot, spinach, and rhubarb. If you want to save space, you can plant early tomatoes or cucumbers between Brussels sprouts, as Brussels sprouts are very slow growing. That plant also like to grow next to celery and leeks. We fertilize it like common cabbage. Manure is applied at the rate of 30 kilograms per 10 square meters. However, be careful of over-fertilization, as it can contribute to the formation of loose heads. In addition to manure, mineral fertilizers are also used. For 10 square meters of area, we give 300 grams of ammonium nitrate, which is spread a few days before planting, 300 grams of 18% superphosphate, 300 grams of 40% potassium salt, and 300 grams of ammonium nitrate. Boron is a very important element in the proper development of Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts need more boron than most other vegetables. It is a plant nutrient used in small amounts for all vegetables. When deficient, Brussels sprouts produce elongated stems and small buds. It should also be remembered that an excess of nitrogen causes a delay in tying heads, while potassium makes the heads compact and tight. Nitrogen is naturally found in fertilizers such as blood meal, cottonseed meal, or composted manure. However, an excess of potassium has a negative effect on the quality of the heads. They contain less sugars and less vitamin C. Top dressing with nitrogen is used if the plants are weak and yellow-green. The dose is 200 grams per 10 square meters of ammonium nitrate. Instead of mineral fertilizers, it is best to use diluted liquid manure or cow's manure for top of soil, remembering that excess nitrogen can cause loose heads. It is worth using compost if the soil is barren. High peat, ammonium nitrate, urea, ammonium sulfate, sawdust, composted bark and needles contribute to soil acidification. Because brassicas do not tolerate acidic soil, it should be deacidified with garden lime, dolomite, or wood ash. It is best to lime the soil before the season. Fertilization can also be applied in a typical agricultural system. The doses will be as follows. The optimal amount of minerals for Brussels sprouts per 1 ha is 150 to 200 kilograms of nitrogen, approximate 100 to 150 kilograms of phosphorus and 200 to 250 kilograms of potassium. Before planting, you should check the mineral content in the soil and get rid of all phosphorus and potassium and 40% of nitrogen. The second dose of nitrogen, 30%, is applied for top of soil at the stage of 5 to 6 leaves, and the third, 30%, is sown in the interrow in the initial period of head binding. With this fertilization, it is also important to remember to balance the nitrogen from the crop residues of the four-crop plant well, because too high doses of it cause lodging of plants, uneven growth of the heads and internal browning of the heads. Seeds are sown in the seed bed in mid-April. They retain their germination capacity for 3 to 4 years, while they germinate 3 to 6 days after sowing. 3 months after sowing, small heads grow up to the size of a walnut in the leaf axils. Brussels sprouts can be grown from seedlings, preferably multi-pallets, because it does not like transplanting and from sowing directly into the ground. Growing from seedlings is more popular as it ensures better plant development, and reduces the risk of diseases. Seedlings are planted in late May or early June. Brussels sprouts intended for autumn crop are early varieties, which are sown in March under cover. Such seedlings are planted in May and harvested gradually throughout the autumn. For the winter harvest, i.e. from January to spring, Brussels sprouts are sown in April and seedlings are planted in June. Seedlings are planted at a spacing of 60 on 60 centimeters or 50 on 60 centimeters. The distances between the rows should be greater, 70 to 80 centimeters. In 2 rows or in a single row. Late varieties are better sown a little earlier. Cabbage seedlings often fail on home windowsills. It is too warm there and there is not enough sun, which causes rapid growth, stretching of the seedlings and eventually the plants die. Brussels sprouts should be prepared in a moderate test room, i.e. at a temperature of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. If you are unable to sow at home or in an inspection, try sowing the seeds in shallow furrows in the ground, cover with a layer of earth and cover with mesh so that the birds do not eat it. When sowing directly into the ground, we keep the same dates as when sowing in a seed bed or 2 to 3 weeks later. Already after 8 to 14 days from sowing, emergence is observed. In order for the seedlings to survive, they need to be watered, weeded, and protected from severe frosts. When sowing to a permanent place, it is necessary to interrupt 2 densely planted plants in the phase of 3 to 5 leaves. Seedling preparation takes about 7 weeks. After 2 to 3 weeks, the seeds sown in the box should be transplanted to pots or directly to the hotbed in a spacing of 6 on 6 centimeters. If the plants generally grow poorly, you can feed them with a solution of ammonium nitrate in the amount of 3 grams per 1 liter of water. If you harden the seedling, you can plant it in the ground in mid-April. It is then worth protecting the Brussels sprouts from cabbage rot at this stage. Use an appropriate preparation or cover with a mosquito net with an appropriate mesh density. Protection against garbage consists in soaking the roots in a mush of water, clay, and peat with the addition of a preparation, e.g. Fitsol in the amount of 5 grams per liter. You can also use collars around the plant or non-woven fabric. To obtain nice stocky seedlings in the seedling, it should be assumed that we sow 3 grams of seeds per 1 square meter in rows every 10 centimeters. You cannot leave the seedlings in containers for a long time, over-dry them and bring them to stunting. They should be blown up as soon as they are ready. From 1 gram of seeds, we will get from 100 to 200 plants, depending on the conditions and the quality of the seed material. Before planting to a permanent place, discard small and diseased seedlings. If the soil on the plot is very dry, it should be watered a few hours before planting. It is best to irrigate both the soil and the seedlings before planting. Plants take about 10 days after transplanting. After this period, they should be supplied with nitrate. After 2 weeks, saltpeter is used again. Instead of saltpeter, you can use cow dung or cow dung diluted 5 times with water. Then we repeat fertilization every 4 weeks. Further care consists in weeding and shallow soil movement, preferably with a hoe around the plants and a manual planet in the inter-rows. From the second half of May, abundant watering is necessary, both during drought. In times of drought, it is important to water Brussels sprouts abundantly. Lack of water significantly affects the quality of crops. During drought, unwatered heads begin to loosen and seem to bloom. Watering is most needed during the period of intensive formation of heads. It falls on August and September. Thanks to its deep roots, Brussels sprouts are more resistant to drought than other brassicas, but you should remember about its proper hydration during hot periods. Sunny cool days and nights are best for compact heads. Sometimes it is necessary to topping Brussels sprouts, i.e. removing the top rosette of leaves at the end of the stem. This is done if for various reasons, e.g. too late planting or over-fertilization, Brussels sprouts did not start to form heads in September. Removing the top of the plant inhibits its growth but accelerates the formation of heads. At the same time, it can also weaken the plant and the yield itself can be smaller. It depends on the time of making and the variety of Brussels sprouts. Thus, topping, which takes place in September, is mainly aimed at accelerating the growth of the heads already tied in the upper part of the plant. If topping is done too early, loose heads will form and a low yield will occur. If topping is performed too late, the treatment will be ineffective. The most appropriate time is the period when the lower heads are tied, which have reached a diameter of 3/4 of their size, i.e. about 2 centimeters. Harvest takes place 4 to 6 weeks after topping. The leaves from the top of the shoot can be cooked and eaten. Removing them from the plant will also deprive the aphids of places where they can hide and feed. The topping procedure applies to vegetables intended for autumn harvest, not winter, because in this way their frost resistance is reduced. Topped plants should have all heads developed, and the lowest heads should be approximate 2 centimeters in diameter. The yield of untopped crops can be lower by up to 20%, but topping must be carried out correctly. Topping significantly increases the yield of early cultivars, while in late cultivars it does not have a major effect on the yield. If we remove the lower leaves growing at the base, we will limit the excessive growth of the lower heads. The procedure of digging and sprinkling Brussels sprouts is unnecessary. It is intended to protect the plant from severe frosts, but Brussels sprouts do well in frosty weather. The heads can be harvested many times as the heads grow up. Usually harvested from the bottom of the plant, but when harvest takes place in late autumn after the first stronger frost, which causes an increase in the sugar content in the heads, having a positive effect on their taste. However, frost lowers the vitamin C content of the vegetable. One full-size healthy plant can yield from 0.9 to 1.3 kilograms. The average yield is 6 to 10 tons from 1 hectare. Leaf heads ripen faster when it's cooler and slower when it's warmer. The next leaf head does not form in the place after the harvested leaf head. You take the whole plant out of the soil along with the roots and put it in the basement, then you can take the heads gradually, breaking them off. You can also pit the whole plant with the root ball, placed one next to the other vertically in a sheltered place or pits 1 meter wide, and the same height as the plant. When frost comes, the pits are covered with boards or stakes on top, and then a layer of straw is laid. Pitched plants should be covered. Frozen, it is thawed and detached from the stem. If stored indoors, the temperature should be 0 to 2 degrees Celsius and humidity 85%. It can be a recessed frame or a bright basement. In such conditions, Brussels sprouts can lie until February. You can also leave Brussels sprouts in the ground and gradually harvest them throughout the winter, as long as it is frosty and does not thaw frequently, as alternate freezing and thawing will cause rotting and fungal diseases. You can harvest Brussels sprouts until mid-January. The best time to harvest Brussels sprouts is when the heads are big and firm, but the outer foxes have not yet started to turn yellow. Torn off heads can be stored in rooms with high humidity, i.e. 90 to 95% at a temperature of 0 to 2 degrees Celsius for 4 weeks, and at a temperature of from -2 to -3 degrees Celsius for 10 weeks. You can also harvest Brussels sprouts and freeze them in the freezer. On smaller plantations, they are harvested successively as they mature, and on larger areas, once, mechanically with simultaneous sorting. When stored at 10 degrees Celsius, yellowing of the leaves and discoloration of the scapes are visible after a week. Brussels sprouts are very sensitive to the effects of ethylene, which causes yellowing of the heads, falling off leaves, aging, and increased rotting. Avoid storing it together with vegetables or fruits that emit ethylene, such as a ripening banana. If there are pests, you can use chemical preparations for fleas, caterpillars, and aphids, with a 14-day grace period. However, it is better to use bacterial preparations that are harmless to humans, such as Dipel or Bactospane. Yellowing leaves with symptoms of diseases are removed and thrown away. This allows you to limit the spread of pathogens. In July and August, you can spray all brassica plants with an extract from the leaves of tomatoes, celery, or wormwood. This prevents the attacks of the white butterfly and cabbage moth. Fresh leaves, pour enough water to cover them and leave for 24 hours. Then strain and dilute with water. For 1 liter of the product we give 5 liters of water. The most effective will be spraying with wormwood with the addition of potassium soap. We add 1 tablespoon of soap to 1 liter of finished spray. In August, it is worth watering brassica plants with manure from tansy, which will exterminate pests, including soil ones. In addition to aphids, cabbage fly and whites, Brussels sprouts may be threatened by the diamondback moth and turnip whites. Of the diseases you need to watch out for the aforementioned syphilis as well as powdery mildew and rust. When the temperature stays around 6 degrees Celsius, Brussels sprouts begin to be attacked by fungal diseases. The pathogen of seedling blight, i.e. black leg, are various fungi. These are parasitic fungi living in the soil, such as Rhizoctonia solani, Olpidium brassicae, Pythium debryanum, which develop rapidly under favorable conditions and attack young plants. The disease affects the necks of young plants. Black spots spread on the lower part of the stem, the plant wilts and dies. The formation of the disease is favored by excessive humidity of the air, soil, and dense sowing. Once the disease appears in hotbeds and in the seedbed, it is difficult to eradicate it. Reduce watering, remove diseased plants and air the hotbed frequently. It is better to prevent this disease. The seeds are treated with suitable fungicides. Lighter, permeable, and not too wet soils are then chosen for the seedbed. Sites that have had gangrene in the previous year should be avoided. It is better to sow in rows than in broadcasts. Cover the seeds with soil, the top of the soil with a layer of wood ash or coarse sand. You can also use perlite, which absorbs excess moisture from the surface. When sowing in boxes, we use new soil or we disinfect the old one, e.g. by steaming, hot steam, hydrogen peroxide solution or by burning. It is best to bring the soil temperature to 70 to 90 degrees Celsius and maintain this level for 20 minutes. This will decontaminate all soil from fungi, parasites, and viruses, and destroy weeds and their seeds. After such a steam treatment, sowing seeds or planting seedlings is possible after 10 days at the earliest. 1 week before sowing, chemical soil decontamination can also be applied, e.g. with Terraform or T40. It is also recommended to disinfect the boxes and inspection windows with boiling water, with the addition of soda or 4% bleaching chloride or 5% formalin. We ventilate the hotbeds, keep the temperature at 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. Brassica downy mildew. The culprit of this disease is Peronospora brassicae. The symptom is yellowing and dying of the leaf as well as wilting of the whole plant. The fungus is formed with high soil moisture, air, and excessive watering. It is manifested by a gray coating on the underside of the leaves. To avoid this disease, sow not too densely, water moderately, and ventilate the hotbed. Chemical control is by spraying the plants with Ditane M45, thoroughly spraying the underside of the leaves. Club root. It is one of the most dangerous diseases where Plasmodiophora brassicae is the pathogen. It infects brassica plants in various stages of development. Young plants in the bed usually die, and older ones in the flower bed turn yellow, easily wilt, die or grow poorly without wrapping their heads. These are fungal spores that can survive in the soil for 4 to 5 years. The pathogen in contact with the root of the plant penetrates deep into it. Shapeless bumps appear on the roots. They darken and rot over time. Syphilis develops only in plants from the cruciferous family, therefore the most important preventive measure is the use of crop rotation. We do not grow vegetables from this family on the contaminated site for 4 to 5 years. This also applies to weeds of this family. After this period, lime is applied and only then can brassica be grown again. On acidified and waterlogged soil, syphilis is more common. The disease is prevented by applying liming in the fall with calcium oxide fertilizer 1.5 to 5 tons per hectare. On light soils, do not exceed 1.5 ton on hectare. Because liming reduces boron, we also use triple boronate superphosphate in spring. In the case of syphilis in hotbeds and greenhouses, disinfection is carried out as in the case of seedling blight. Only healthy seedlings without growths on the roots are planted. Before planting, it is recommended to dip the roots from the seedlings in a mush of clay and peat with the addition of Topsin M. Water the plants regularly after application. Infested plants are removed and burned or buried somewhere far away and the soil decontaminated with quicklime. Dry rot of cabbage. The disease is caused by the Fomalingum. It infects plants during cultivation and in mounds and storage rooms. It spreads easily with infected seeds as well as debris left in the beds. Similar to the black leg, the plant turns black when the fungus attacks and then dies if it is weak. Stronger plants develop normally, passing the pathogen further. In the flower bed, you can detect the disease 2 to 3 weeks after planting the seedlings. Affected plants are retarded in growth and their lower leaves turn red. Small black dots form on the roots. We fight like blight of seedlings. Then you can't grow brassicas in that place for 6 years. Another disease that can attack Brussels sprouts is internal browning of Brussels sprouts. This disease only affects Brussels sprouts. Its first symptoms were noticed in Great Britain and the Netherlands. It also occurs in Europe. The heads are discolored inside and the leaves turn pink. The spots are initially small, then expand, then the heads turn brown and rot. Symptoms are visible only on the inside, outside it looks healthy. In order to prevent this disease, you should choose resistant varieties such as jade. Do not grow Brussels sprouts on peat soils and do not use too high doses of nitrogen. The reason is the lack of calcium in the plant, so it is worth fertilizing with nitrogen in the form of nitrate. Ammonium nitrogen and high doses of potassium make it difficult for the plant to absorb calcium. Cross black. When Alternaria brassicae causes this disease, large dark spots can be seen in the first year. Within this area, the tissue gradually dies. In spring, loose raids on the surface of the leaves are visible. The fungus overwinters in mounds and infects plants in subsequent years. It attacks shoots and pods successively. The yield is significantly reduced. In order to prevent, 3 to 7 days before mounding, the plants are sprayed with, for example, Sadovet or tea seed dressing. During the rainy season in July, spraying is repeated every 10 days. After harvesting, plant residues are burned. Seeds are best decontaminated and seasoned. In addition to diseases, we may have to deal with pests of brassica plants. Ground fleas appear in early spring. These are black beetles with a metallic sheen or with yellow stripes. Adult insects overwinter in recesses, under plant remains, stones and in the grass. Initially, they feed on cruciferous weeds, then move on to young brassica seedlings. They damage the leaves, appear when it is sunny and dry, and can destroy the entire plant. They can be combated by frequent spraying of plants or dusting with ash after dew. Cabbage cream. This pest of brassica plants has several generations per year. The first generation that attacks young seedlings is the most dangerous. It is a small dark gray fly, similar to the housefly. If there are flies on your cabbage, know that these are not ordinary flies, but pests of your crops. At the turn of April and May, the black fly lays eggs, which are white and oblong. They can be seen on the root collar or next to it. The white larvae initially feed on the roots, then bite inside the plant. When damaged, they wither and die or grow poorly. The second generation occurs in July and August. It causes less damage then, but their feeding can cause bacteriosis and other diseases. To combat them, the soil is thermally decontaminated and insecticides are used. Fungicides are applied 3 days before quilting the plants. Good results are obtained by immersing the roots of the seedlings in a mush of clay with cowwort or peat in a ratio of 1:1 with the addition of Primicid 30, before planting. Please note that these are highly poisonous agents. Four-tooth chopper. It attacks brassicas at every stage of development. The adult insect is a small beetle with a long snout. Winters under leaves or in the ground. At first it feeds on weeds. The female pierces the stem and lays eggs there. A raised spot forms there, then the larvae burrow into the plant. The affected seedling wilts and dies. Older plants gradually die. Carbadix or Gammacorbadix is usually used. Yellow and damaged leaves should be removed, as well as plant remains with roots. The soil should be dug well. Chow H. Galasoec. The plant damaged by it forms thickened tissue. Inside are small larvae with a yellow head. Cruciferous bead. It causes significant losses in plantations. It is a fly that appears in May. In June, it lays eggs between the leaves. The larvae feed on the sap of the leaves, which causes their deformation. They can survive on weeds of this family. Plants should be sprayed with a suitable preparation 14 days after planting the seedlings. Repeat the treatment 3 times at 3-week intervals until the heads curl up. Cabbage butterfly. Although it is a beautiful butterfly, its caterpillars feed on brassica leaves. They are so voracious that only the veins of the leaves will remain. 2 generations hatch per year. The first in spring and it is scarce, it feeds on cruciferous weeds. The second July generation is more dangerous. Eggs can be destroyed manually, e.g. crushed through a cloth, and the larvae collected. Chemical sprays are used over a larger area. The white's natural enemy is the white nugget, which lays its eggs in live caterpillars of the butterfly. Cocoons similar to the eggs of the white-tailed eagle then form on the larva. White-tailed larvae also die due to the penetration of bacteria into their bodies. Dipel can be used. This is where these bacteria are found. It is used during the period of mass butterfly hatching. It is an ecological agent, harmless to humans. Belineck agrimony is a butterfly similar to cabbage butterfly. We fight it in the same way. Cabbage mustard. It is a night butterfly. The caterpillars bite into the heads and contaminate them with their droppings. We fight the same as whites. Farmers are night butterflies. The caterpillars feed on the roots, including brassicas, but also other plants, causing their death. The method of combating is scattering near the plants in the interrows, in the form of potato pieces poisoned with liquid fauchelore. Cabbage aphid. Appears when it's sunny and dry. These are green aphids and are difficult to spot on green leaves at first. They suck the sap from the plants, the leaves shrink, and the plant stops growing. Controlled inflorescences do not produce seeds. Spraying should start when the lower heads reach the size of pea seeds. The treatment is applied every 14 days from the end of September to the beginning of October. Rapeseed candy. A dark blue or copper green beetle, resembles a ground flea but does not jump. They lay eggs in flower buds. They feed on them and the plant cannot produce seeds. Both early and late varieties can be grown. Real lovers of Brussels sprouts must try the purple variety of this vegetable. The medium early red variety has a growing season of 100 to 110 days. Harvest from October to December. Jade. An early variety from Japan. We harvest it 2 weeks earlier than other varieties, while being very productive, and the heads are along the entire length of the stem. It reaches a height of 50 centimeters and is resistant to browning of the heads. Fest und Veal. This is an old common fertile variety from Germany, for winter use. Harvest after 5 months from sowing, grows up to 90 centimeters in height, stores well. Maxuga. A variety of Polish origin, derived from the Sanda variety, late and fertile. The best for Europe area gardens. It has less soil requirements than other varieties and is resistant to diseases. Very fertile, suitable for winter cultivation. Medium-sized, dark green heads. It grows up to 70 centimeters. It is perfect for freezing. Other mid-late varieties with medium to large heads include Lunette, Citadel, Pierre Giant, Parsifal. But these are hybrids and it is not recommended to collect seeds from them because they may not repeat the characteristics of the variety. Pierre Giant is a hybrid variety of Dutch origin, early, but also suitable for mid-late cultivation. A low plant, the vegetation period is 160 days, and the heads are harvested once. Well suited for freezing. The variety is resistant to frost and requires topping. Parsifal, Dutch variety, vegetation period 170 days, heads are smaller, used in agricultural cultivation. Lunette, Dutch variety, tall with medium-sized heads, medium late, good for freezing. Citadel, medium height Dutch variety, small heads slightly elongated, medium late, fertile, good for freezing. Carb. Early variety with medium height and medium size. Mid-early varieties with large heads and very productive are Valiant, Lancelot, Acropolis. Lancelot is a Dutch variety good for poorer soils. It is grown in a smaller spacing, because if it is too large, it creates too large heads, so it is suitable for small gardens. The heads are dark green, a mid-early variety. We can also divide Brussels sprouts according to the vegetation period to optimally plan how we will use the bed. Early, whose production closes in 100 to 150 days, e.g. Abacus F1, Cyrus F1, medium early, requiring a vegetation period of about 150 to 180 days, e.g. Diablo F1, Octia, President F1, medium late, ripening after about 180 to 200 days of vegetation, e.g. Apetita F1, Neptuno, and late, suitable for harvesting after more than 200 days of cultivation, e.g. Ajax F1.